My wife still reaches for my hand in the dark. After everything, after all of it, she still does that. I am 57 years old. 3 years ago, I could not look her in the eye when we turned off the light. 3 years ago, I was lying still, waiting for her breathing to slow down so I knew she was asleep and I could stop pretending everything was fine. And now this. Now her hand finding mine in the dark, like it's the most natural thing in the world. I want to tell you how that happened. Because it did not happen the way I expected. It was not a doctor. It was not a prescription. It was not some dramatic moment where everything clicked into place. It was quieter than that. And it started with something I did before bed. Something small enough that I almost dismissed it. If what I just described sounds familiar to you, the lying still, the waiting for her to fall asleep, the growing distance that nobody names but everyone feels, stay until the end of this. What I found is buried in the second half of what I'm about to tell you. And it is the part that changed everything. I have been where you are. The silence in a bed that used to be warm. The way you start avoiding the moments that used to come naturally. I know that place. I lived there for longer than I am comfortable admitting. So stay. Let me start at the beginning. 3 years before I found what I'm going to tell you about, I was in a different kind of life. I had driven trucks for most of my working years. Long routes, irregular sleep, meals at odd hours, years of sitting behind a wheel with my back carrying the weight of everything. When I retired, I thought the rest would fix me. I thought the body just needed a break and it would come back to itself. It did not. The first time I noticed something was wrong, I was 54. It was a Saturday morning, early. The kind of morning where the light comes in slowly and everything feels quiet and still. My wife was still half asleep beside me, and I felt nothing. Not tired, not distracted, just nothing. The body that had been mine for 54 years was quiet in a way that felt wrong, like a clock that had stopped. I told myself it was the week I'd had, the stress, the change in sleep. I had 100 reasons ready, but it kept happening, and the reasons started running out. What replaced them was something I had no name for at the time. It was not sadness exactly. It was more like a slow withdrawal. I stopped initiating anything. I started going to bed later than she did, finding reasons to stay up. A program to finish, something to read, anything that meant I could wait until she was asleep. I was not angry at her. I was not angry at myself. I was just gone somehow, smaller, like something inside me had quietly stepped back from the window. I remember the specific morning I finally told myself the truth. I was washing up before bed, looking in the mirror, and I thought, this is not fatigue. Something is actually wrong. I made an appointment the following week. The doctor was polite, professional. He ran blood work, asked a few questions in the practiced way they ask questions when they already have the answer they're reaching for. He told me my testosterone was on the lower end of normal. He used that phrase twice. Lower end of normal. He said this was expected for my age. He said some men notice these changes in their 50s and that there were options. He said it the way you say there are options when you mean there is one option and you're about to write the prescription. He gave me a referral and a pamphlet. I drove home with the pamphlet on the passenger seat and did not open it. I tried the medication. I want to be honest about that. I tried what the doctor gave me, and it worked. In the narrow mechanical sense that such things work. But it felt like borrowing, like something I was renting instead of owning. And there were other things, the headaches, the way my heart felt some mornings, the knowledge that I was one missed dose away from being back where I started, except now I would also be dependent on something I didn't fully trust. I stopped after a few months. I told myself I would figure something else out. I did not know what that meant. I just knew that what I was doing was not the answer. For about a year after that, I did nothing. I adapted. I made peace, or what I called peace, which was really just a slower version of giving up. My wife never said anything. That was the worst part. She could see it, I know she could see it, and she never said a word. There is a kindness in that I still think about. The thing that changed came from the most ordinary place. I had a neighbor, older than me by maybe 8 years, a man I had known since we moved into the area. He was not what you would call a close friend. We talked over the fence, shared tools now and then, the usual things. He was the kind of man who moved like he had somewhere to be, even on a Sunday morning. Alert, present. You noticed it without knowing exactly what you were noticing. One afternoon we were in his yard, and I made some comment, a small one, a deflecting kind of comment, the sort men make when they're saying something without saying it, about getting old, about the body not being what it was. I didn't plan to say it. It came out sideways. He looked at me for a moment, and then, without any preamble, he told me he had been through something similar 6 years earlier. He described it plainly, the way men describe things when they've had enough time to lose the embarrassment. He said he had spent years trusting the medical system to fix it, and that what had actually helped him was something he'd found on his own, late, much later than he wished he'd found it. I told him honestly that I had no faith in supplements. None. I had watched too many things come and go, the ones promising everything, the ones that did nothing, the quiet industry of hope sold in bottles. I was done with all of it. I had made peace with the idea that if the doctor couldn't fix it, nothing could. That was the story I had told myself, and I had told it long enough that it had started to feel like fact. He did not argue with me. He just said he had felt exactly the same way, for exactly the same reasons. And then he showed me what he had been taking. It was a natural supplement, a formula with several plant-based ingredients. He pointed out 2 things in particular. One was horny goatweed, an eastern plant with centuries of use, known for what it does to circulation in the tissue that matters most. The other was something that works on the blood vessels themselves, an antioxidant that goes after the inflammation that builds up in the small vessels over years of wear and bad habits, and too many hours sitting in a truck seat. He didn't explain it like a scientist. He explained it the way you explain something that worked for you. That was enough. I didn't go home and order it that night. I want to be honest about that too. I thought about it for 2 weeks. I talked myself out of it and back into it several times. What finally got me was the memory of that morning in the mirror, looking at someone I didn't quite recognize. I ordered it. I started taking it the last thing each night, before bed. That became the habit, the anchor for everything else that followed. The first 3 weeks, nothing I could name. I was not surprised. I had kept my expectations low enough to protect myself. Then, somewhere around the 4th week, I had a morning that felt different. Not dramatic. I want to be careful here, because I am not describing a transformation in a single day. It was more like a door that had been stuck for a long time moved slightly on its hinge. I noticed it the way you notice when a room that was always a little cold feels warmer than usual. Quietly, without fanfare. By the 6th week, the mornings were consistently different, and then the evenings. And then my wife stopped going to sleep before I came to bed. The link to what I started using is in the description, for anyone who wants to take a look. It's there. No pressure. Take your time with it. But that was only part of what changed. Let me tell you what actually made the difference. The first thing I changed was when I ate my last meal of the day. This came from something I read by accident, a study out of a research group tracking metabolic patterns in men over 50. And what it said was straightforward enough that I have never forgotten it. The liver does most of its hormonal processing work during the deep hours of the night, but it cannot do that work and digest a heavy meal at the same time. Pick one. Most men are picking the meal. For years, I ate late. Truck driving does that to you. You eat when you can, not when you should. I moved my last meal to 3 hours before I wanted to be in deep sleep. Within about 10 days, I was waking up feeling like I had actually rested. It sounds like nothing. It was not nothing. The biology works like this. Imagine the liver as a man who works 2 jobs. During the day, he's dealing with everything coming in. The coffee, the stress, the food. At night, his real job begins. Clearing out the hormones that have built up, balancing what needs to be balanced, disposing of what needs to go. But if you keep feeding him at 11 at night, he is stuck at the first job. The second job never gets done. And the second job is the one that keeps your hormones from turning into something they shouldn't be. The most common mistake is shifting the meal by 30 minutes and calling it done. You need 3 hours, not 90 minutes, 3 hours. If sleep is at 10:30, the kitchen is closed by 7:30. That is the instruction, and the exactness of it is the point. If you found something in what I just said, like it fits something you've noticed in yourself, I want to ask you something. There are men watching this who have been carrying this quietly for years, and they need to know it's here. If you subscribe and leave a like, it helps this reach them. I'm not interested in numbers. I'm interested in the next man who needs to hear that there's still a way through. Help me find him. The second thing I changed was how I moved in the evening. Not exercise. I want to be specific. Not the kind of movement that raises your heart rate and puts your body into a stress response an hour before bed. Something gentler. Something that specifically works on circulation in the lower half of the body. I started walking for 20 minutes after dinner. Flat ground, slow pace, nothing heroic. The point was not fitness. The point was the pelvis. Most men who have spent years driving or sitting behind a desk have circulation in the lower body that has gradually become sluggish. The small vessels, the ones that matter most for what we're talking about, are last in line when blood is being distributed to a body that doesn't move enough. Walking in the evening, at that pace, specifically after a meal, reopens that circulation in a way that carries into sleep. The mistake most men make is they do nothing in the evening and think they'll make up for it with an intense workout in the morning. The morning workout has its own value, but it doesn't do what the evening walk does. These are different mechanisms, not interchangeable ones. A group studying vascular health in men over 50 documented a measurable improvement in peripheral circulation after 6 weeks of moderate walking, specifically in the evening hours. Not complicated, not expensive, 20 minutes, flat ground, same time each night so the body learns to expect it. The third thing was something I almost didn't take seriously because it seemed too simple. Cold water on the face and neck before bed. Not a cold shower. I want to be precise. Cold water, specifically on the face, the throat, and the back of the neck. 30 seconds. Every night. What this does is activate a reflex called the dive response, the body's ancient mechanism for slowing everything down rapidly. Heart rate drops. The nervous system shifts from the alert, scanning state it's been in all day into something quieter. And when the nervous system is quieter, the hormonal signals that get drowned out during the day have room to move. The research behind this is older than most people realize. It was documented in cardiovascular studies from the 1980s, where researchers noticed that even brief cold water contact with the face produced a measurable parasympathetic response, meaning the body's rest and recover system came online faster. Faster recovery into deep sleep. And deep sleep is where the body produces most of its nighttime testosterone. The mistake men make with this is they try to make it dramatic. A cold plunge, the full shower, something that requires commitment and will. You will do it twice and stop. 30 seconds, face and neck, before you brush your teeth. That's the version you will do every night. The fourth thing I changed was the most counterintuitive. I stopped drinking anything with caffeine after noon. Not 2 in the afternoon. Noon. This felt extreme to me when I first did it. I was used to a coffee in the mid-afternoon, something to push through the last part of the day. The research convinced me to stop. Caffeine has a half-life of about 5 to 6 hours in the body. That means the coffee at 2 in the afternoon is still half active at 7 or 8 at night. And what it does during that window is raise cortisol, the stress hormone, at exactly the hours when the body is trying to wind down and begin the process of hormonal restoration. Elevated cortisol at night is one of the quietest killers of male hormonal health after 50. It competes directly with testosterone production. The body cannot do both things at once. A research group tracking sleep architecture in men between 50 and 70 found that moving caffeine cutoff from the mid-afternoon to noon improved the percentage of deep sleep in the first half of the night by a significant margin. And the first half of the night is the window when the most hormonal restoration occurs. The mistake is thinking that if you don't feel wired at night, the caffeine isn't affecting you. It is. You've just adapted to feeling wired, so you don't notice it anymore. That's not the same as it not being there. What I've just described to you, the meal timing, the evening walk, the cold water, the caffeine cutoff, these are the things that built the foundation. They didn't replace what I found in that conversation with my neighbor. They worked alongside it. Each one made the other work better. That is the honest answer. I am 57 years old. I live in a quiet place, the kind where the mornings are slow and you can hear the yard before you see it. I wake up now without the weight that used to be there. Not every morning is perfect, but most of them are mine again. That's the difference that matters. The thesis is simple. The body after 50 does not want to fail. It wants the right conditions. Most men have spent years giving it the wrong ones, not from laziness, but from not knowing, from trusting a system that was not built to give them this answer. Tell me in the comments, what was the moment when you first noticed something had changed? I mean the specific moment, not the general decline, but the day or the morning or the particular instance when you looked at yourself and thought, something is different. I want to know. Men almost never say it out loud. Say it here. Now, the last thing I want to say. The body does not respond the same at 57 as it does at 62 or 66. I learned this the way most men learn things they should have known earlier, by waiting. The tissue that responds to these changes, the small vessels that regain their flexibility, the hormonal pathways that reopen when you give them the right support, they respond better the sooner you decide to act, not urgently, gradually and steadily. But the window does exist, and it narrows, not with a bang, just quietly, a little more each year. More mornings of lying still, more evenings that end in separate silences, more years of feeling like a smaller version of the man you know you are. That is the actual cost. Not a catastrophe, just erosion. Quiet, daily erosion. What I shared in this video and what I found in the description belong together. One without the other is not the full picture. They are part of the same path. The link is in the description and pinned in the comments. Go there, read through it carefully, and make your own call. No one is going to pressure you. No one is going to tell you it's the last bottle or that you need to decide today. Just read it and decide for yourself. The men who turned this around had one thing in common. They stopped waiting for something to change on its own.